Welcome to another Mars Best Practices event where we take a deep dive into specific topics in entrepreneurship. My name is Gina Leslie. I'm the manager for the Entrepreneurship and Innovation series. And this afternoon we have the pleasure of having Saul Colt speak to us. Saul is head of magic at Kinetic Cafe, and he's going to share with us some tips on basically how to make sure that your startup stands out in a very noisy and crowded world. Saul has lots of accomplishments, but I'll let him speak to you about all of what that looks like. But in his previous life, he was the first international employee of Zipcar. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Since I love Zipcar very much, especially when I lived in the US, it was very helpful. In his career, he has been named one of the iMedia 25 Internet Marketing Leaders and Innovators and called one of Canada's best community builders and experiential marketers. The New York Times best-selling author and internet pioneer Chris Brogan once referred to Saul as exactly who you want representing your company. I'm very excited to hear him speak. It's going to be a lot of great content. He came highly recommended. So please join me in welcoming him to the podium with another round of applause.
How's everybody doing? Good. So I know you guys were expecting to hear about guerrilla marketing, like Guerrilla, but I'm actually going to speak about like guerrilla marketing, which is something way different, and you guys will sort of figure it out as I go along. Just to give you like a really quick thing, this is going to be a presentation in 3 parts. And what it is I'm going to start with a personal story, just because it's very rare that I'm in a room with like 40 people and I can just talk about things that are on my mind. And then once I've sort of gotten that off my chest, I'm going to dive right into telling you guys how to do this stuff, and then I'm going to give you like 100 examples. So you're going to have to bear with me. But I'm also going to have to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. There's going to be some adult conversation in this talk. So all the views expressed today are basically my own. They don't necessarily reflect those of Mars, the Prime Minister, the Premier, anybody else but me. So if you guys are lucky, this is going to be the single greatest talk that's ever happened in this room. So you guys are in for something special, but I may upset some of your delicate sensibilities, but that's sort of kind of, all about guerrilla marketing. So if you have any, if you guys do think this is the greatest talk in the world, it's all thanks to me. And if you think it's the most offensive thing, again, it's all thanks to me as well. But my opinions are shared with all of my previous employers, so you can get angry at them too. Just don't get angry at Mars. So, like I said, I'm going to tell you a bit of a story. And I want you guys to pay really close attention because it's going to sound like a little bit different and you guys are going to wonder what you signed up for. But I promise you by the end of this talk, or at least in like 15 minutes, it's all going to make sense and you're going to get it. Come on, sit down. Okay, I'm going to start out with a little audience participation. Is everyone ready? Yeah. Okay. Raise your hand if you had sex in the last 24 hours. Okay, this is a good room. What about the last 48 hours? Okay, at least I know what kind of room I'm in. So I have sex a lot. As you can see from my calendar, there's red hearts all over the place. That one's only partially filled in. But it's interesting. The reason I bring up the fact that Aaron Hamilton, ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Hamilton, came in just as I was explaining my sex life. So I have sex a lot, and the woman that I'm currently having sex with the most, she's really in touch with her own body, and she likes to tell me all about it. You guys are going to have to read the slides, because as part of my deal, I'm not allowed to read these things out loud. So this is the audience participation part. Okay, I'm going to give it a second just sort of let that sink in. Okay. She also likes to let me know where she is at all times, which is sort of the foundation of every good relationship. Again, best presentation you guys have ever seen in this building ever. She knows I like to look at naked women, so she sends me pictures of people that aren't necessarily her. Who's offended already? I'm a little offended by this presentation already. If you notice, that's me there, because I decided to not show nudity here out of respect for you people. So this is an interesting part of the story. A couple nights ago, as I'm lying in the wet spot, because ladies, I am a gentleman, I always lie in the wet spot, even when I'm alone. She said something to me that didn't really sink in until this morning. Okay, Tally, you look horrified. Just try to play along. She said, the thing I like most about making love to you is I can actually see and feel your heart break a little as we do it, because while I know you love me, I also know I'm not the one you want to be with. That's like maybe the most profound and sad thing you could ever say to somebody lying in, you know what I was lying in. So if you're asking yourself, what kind of person would ever say such a thing? And that's probably not what you're asking. You're probably asking, I thought I signed up for some marketing lecture, but I promise we're getting to that. Who would say such a thing? I forgot to mention that I'm sleeping with my psychiatrist. She thinks at a totally other level than most people. Wow, this is a tough room. You guys are shocked. But she isn't exactly wrong, because obviously she knows everything about her, about me. And one of the things that she sort of tapped in on, which is really important, is there is someone else. Okay, so this is her. This I'm not going to sort of rat her out or make any big spectacle about it. But this is a picture of us together. As you see, we're adorable. We're just like two peas in a pod and stuff like that. And I realized that I was crazy about this girl. And by the way, guys, if you guys want to tweet about this stuff or take pictures, I encourage you to take pictures now, because I may get a little sweaty later, and it just won't be as good. But I realized I was crazy about this girl when she told me a Batman joke. Do you guys want to hear the joke? Yes. Okay. This 6-year-old kid is walking along the beach, and he finds a genie's lamp. He rubs the lamp, a genie pops out. Genie says, I will grant you any wish. And the kid says, I want to be Batman. So the genie killed his parents. It's a great joke, right? This girl is crazy smart. We have really interesting conversations. We like the same music. And we have this conversation. We were talking the other day about this concept I have about weekend friends. And so I used to travel 4 days of every week. I was in New York City for 126 days over the course of one calendar year, but I was never there on the weekend, because even though I have wonderful, amazing friends in New York City, I never wanted to find out that we weren't weekend friends, because maybe it's just me crazy. They would come and hang out with me Monday to Thursday, but I think there's a whole different level of friendship on the weekend. So we talk about these sort of things. We have these real world kind of fascinating conversations, and and then when I see a picture of her, I get a physical reaction in my abdominal muscles. You can see that's actually her, and that's actually me. And and when I dream about her, I'm not dreaming about having these crazy sex fantasies. I'm dreaming about holding her hand, and when I'm dreaming, I dream that we're a black couple in stock photography sitting in a field. Because, and this is sort of the interesting part of our relationship, she lives in another city. Except for only seeing her 3-4 times a year or so, our relationship is entirely online. It's entirely through text. It's entirely through Skype and all these sort of things. And when things are entirely through text, a lot of things can get misinterpreted. A lot of things can sort of lose things in translation. It sounds like everything's wonderful with us and stuff like that, but when things are entirely online, it does make things harder. I once played her Teddy Pendergrass "Turn Out the Lights," which is maybe the sexiest song ever made ever, and she didn't really care for it. And how do you even know if you really love a person if you can't see their face when they're listening to Teddy P for the first time? That was almost a deal breaker right there. But and that's when I realized that as long as our relationship is entirely online, I'm going to always feel like there's something missing, and a part of me is always going to want something more. And like if you guys sort of really think about that for a minute, that's kind of the basis of all great marketing, and it's certainly the basis of guerrilla marketing. Because when everything's online, you run the risk of people getting busy with work. You run the risk of life just taking over, and you really run the risk about people forgetting about you, whether it's a relationship or it's a company or it's a brand or it's any of the stuff like that. So when people don't understand intent, when people don't understand, they can't see you face to face and things like that, you run a huge risk of just like people not getting it. And that's what it's like right now for me and her, because for reasons I'm not sure, she isn't talking to me right now. It's kind of sad, right? Usually there's at least one person in the room who's like really moved by this. You guys are, now I know why Mars didn't want me to do this talk. So I am sad, and it's kind of bumming me out, but at least I have this pulpit to talk to you guys about. So who's okay with me forgetting the rest of this talk, and let's dive into my relationship a little deeper. Is everyone okay with this? Okay. But it's interesting, because my reason for being a little heartbroken right now is probably the exact way that you get people to understand how to market online and how to do guerrilla marketing and how to really be great at what you do and get people to share and tell stories and get friends really interested in how things are going on. So did you guys catch the formula? Anybody? I just outlined exactly how to do guerrilla marketing. Nobody?
You didn't stay on the slide long enough.
Okay, I'll start over. So let's review. My name is Saul Colt. I am the head of magic of a company called Kinetic Cafe. A little bit about me. You guys don't really care what I'm doing, and I've already poured my heart out to you, and not like a single person even thing, but a little bit about me. I collect sneakers. I used to write comic books for a living. That's my favorite page of all, like the 100 of books I've written. That's my favorite page because it's hilarious, but you guys can't see because it's all really small. A fun fact about me, I once did a keynote in front of 2,000 people where I forgot my laptop at home. So I went to Staples and I drew out all my slides on construction paper and just threw them down on the ground after every slide. Maybe the biggest thing in my career I've done, if you guys have ever been in a Zipcar, I was the person that launched Zipcar in Canada. I also worked for a company called FreshBooks, and I'm a mentor at a incubator in Portland called Pi. It's run by Wyden and Kennedy and Nike, and it's pretty amazing. So what I do has nothing to do with SEO or PPC. Instead of that stuff, I touch people. If you guys know anything about psychic surgery, that is maybe the funniest slide you'll ever see, but apparently this room isn't really my audience. Good touch or bad touch, my job is to create experiences that people remember. I do almost nothing online. When I was at FreshBooks, I was head of non-traditional marketing, and the way we describe that is I did nothing that involved a click or a button or a link or any of that stuff. I did everything in the real world because I believe the real world is where you create relationships. I believe the real world is where you create experiences. I believe the real world is where all the magic happens. I'm going to go through, I've got like 172 more slides to go, and almost all of them are examples of things I've done. What I want you guys to do is not to try to copy these things. You certainly can if you want. They've all been done. But I want you to be inspired. I want you to realize that these are the things you can do. I'm going to go through exactly how to do this stuff, but I want you to understand like what's possible. So if you see here this twister board that says untwist yourself, the fastest way to track time, organize expenses, invoice your clients. A couple years ago, we decided like 3 days before the Mesh conference to have a booth in Mesh. So we didn't have time to actually pull anything together. I figured what's the best way to make a brand impression? Well, of course, have me lie on top of you. So we created a twister board. We put our booth on the ground because when you're walking through trade shows, if you don't want to talk to a company, you usually look at your feet anyways and try to ignore people. So I put our brand on the floor. I lied on tons of people, and I think we were better for it. If you guys see this lost cat poster, it says lost 5 hours a month spent invoicing. It's a cat, where did it go? Has a unique URL that's at freshbooks.com/cats. I love this example because of a few things. I did this in like 30 minutes sitting in front of the TV. It was done in MS Word. It wasn't even done in Photoshop. I made one. I put it outside of the subway station where my assistant got off every morning. This was a joke between me and her. I didn't care if anyone else saw it. It was a throwaway. I put up one. She didn't even see it when she came out to work, but we had 3 new customers that day for my silly little one thing. So by the end of the week, we had 12 new customers for my silly little one thing. So I printed up 2,000 more. And by the end of the month, we had 800 customers. I did it 2,000 more in 5 more cities. This thing converted like crazy for us, and I couldn't tell you why, but it's proof that no idea is too small. There's nothing that's too silly, too imaginative, too, ridiculous to try. You try things, you see what happens. That's how you create experiences. So the way to do all this stuff, the way to touch people, the way to create positive experiences for people is to pretty much mimic my little story of heartbreak. By the way, does anyone believe that that story is true? Okay, good. Then I'm doing my job. From now on, when you are brainstorming ideas, when you're trying to figure out what you should be doing, when you're coming up with content, anything, think about my little story of heartbreak and think about how you could send women to me so I'm no longer heartbroken. But the important things from that story, there was 3 key things that obviously all of you missed, so I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it slower. Every idea going forward from now on must make people laugh. Okay, laughing is a very powerful tool. People like to laugh. Laughing is universal. When you're finished making people laugh, you want to make people think. Okay? Thinking, if they're spending 10 more seconds trying to figure out, is this true? Did it happen? Why is this person telling me that he's sleeping with a psychiatrist? All these things. That is 10 seconds they're not thinking about another brand. That is 10 seconds they're actually remembering you. It's 10 seconds they're trying to understand it. And the best thing in the world is create a genuine emotion, even if it's tears. Okay? Makes perfect sense, right? Some of you still look a little confused. I'll explain it another way. All ideas, if they're going to be successful going forward, must make people laugh, must make people think, and must make people cry. If you can hit all 3 of those emotions, and when I told you my story, usually I actually cry, but this is a classy place, and I already told you I was going to be sweating, so I figured I'd keep my hydration in for my shirt as opposed to other things. But laugh, think, cry. It's super simple, it's easy to remember, and it works. I'm going to show you now a zillion examples of laugh, think, cry, and you'll just get it. But first, I'm going to explain to you a little further how to do it. Best way to do it is through pop culture. Okay, pop culture is this universal thing. It doesn't matter where you were born, how old you are, young, race, color, creed, all that stuff. Everybody kind of knows Seinfeld. Everyone kind of knows Batman. Everyone kind of knows whatever. So, looking around this room, I will prove this, okay? You guys ready? I bet everyone remembers where they were the first time they heard the Rudy Ray Moore Zodiac album. Right? Wow. This is disappointing, guys. Okay, knock knock.
Who's there?
Not a ver. Not a very good response to that last joke. I'm like a psychic. I knew exactly what you guys were going to do. Okay, how about Arrested Development? How many people here know Arrested Development? Most of you? Okay. If you watched Arrested Development or have ever heard of Arrested Development, you know about the banana stand. The slogan was, there's always money in the banana stand. The banana stand was almost a passive character in this television show. Here's how I used Arrested Development a few years ago in a real life way to stand out from a crowd and make people laugh, make people think, and make people cry. I had 10 days to come up with an idea to do for a trade show. Again, similar to like that Mars example, we weren't very good at planning. This was a financial services trade show, so there were going to be people with like $100,000, trade show booths and stuff like that. And one, we didn't have that kind of budget. One, we didn't have a trade show booth. And one, that's a whole lot of ones, we wouldn't bother spending all sorts of money on that stuff because, and this is a really, really important takeaway, if you can't compete or you don't want to compete, don't bother, just change the rules. That's kind of what you do with guerrilla marketing. It's kind of what you do to stand out from the crowd. You make your own terms, you just change whatever. There's no reason to think you have to follow what anyone else is doing. So what I decided to do, just like the whole, hey, I'll just lie on people because that makes the most sense, this was the only idea that ever popped in my head because it just made the most sense, is we built our own banana stand. I found a carpenter in San Francisco, that's where the trade show took place, and he built us an exact replica, well not exact because it's smaller, but he built us a 9-foot-high banana that we put a little sign that said Bluth Banana Stand, we put our logo on. Instead of giving out, beer cozies or mouse pads, whatever you give away at a financial services conference, we gave out 2,000 bananas. And one of the things you'll see that goes through all of these ideas, and one of the things you should be doing when you're trying to do these sort of like stunts and stuff like that, always take the idea one step too far. And what I mean by that is this would have been enough. We could have totally done something cool with this. People would have loved the banana. But one of the things like where all sort of the magic happens in these things is like right here, this is a stunt. You got to take it past the stunt, and you have to like do something that really sort of makes it reasonable and relevant and stuff like that. So we could have just given away bananas, but we actually had stickers made on the bananas that had a unique URL code that would send people to a landing page. The reason we did that was like we gave out 2,000 bananas. You eat the banana, you throw it out, you're not going to remember our brand, or you might remember sort of something fun or different, but the only reason we were at this conference was to actually make money. So all these stunts, the way sort of like laugh, think, cry is the exact way you do it, but one of the most important things that people don't always talk about when they're talking about spectacles and stunts is the stunt is not enough. The stunt just gets people's attention. You actually have to have goals attached to these stunts. I always start with what is the goal? Sometimes the goal is just to get attention, and if that's the goal, then it's way easier. But if the goal is to get customers, or if the goal is to get whatever, start with the goal, work backwards, because the shiny stuff is the easiest stuff. You can always come up with something like that'll get people's attention. So we gave away 2,000 bananas. People loved it, and this idea was brilliant. Do you guys know why?
It was unconventional.
But also because it's a perfect example of laugh, think, cry. And I'm going to break this down for you. I'm not going to break down any other ideas, but this is kind of a cool one. Fans of Arrested Development got the joke right away. People appreciated it. This is a show with an enormously rabid fan base. This was just when this was coming out on Netflix, so people were really excited about it again. There was a lot of attention. People who didn't make the connection or didn't know of Arrested Development just thought it was something interesting and unusual. And either way, people needed to see the booth. That's something really important. You can't have something too, inside baseball that only half the people get. If you're creating a spectacle, create something with an inside joke that at least it's got broad appeal. Making people think. Anytime you see a 10-foot-high banana is going to make you think. Even go as far to scratch your head, even though I'm scratching my leg. The two are not connected, it just happened to get an itch. When you're giving people actual bananas instead of conference swag and things like that, it makes people curious. You actually want people to like scratch their head and wonder what's going on. Creating an emotion. I already mentioned the crazy rabid fan base, and this idea spoke to those people and made an instant impact on them and started conversations. But even people who didn't understand the show or didn't get it or whatever, this was sort of like the modern day lemonade stand. And lemonade stands have been done at trade shows forever, and people get that. But this sort of like tied into those people. As for the actual crying, like I say on the slide, people on either side of us that spent a ridiculous amount of money on their trade show booths. I'm pretty sure they were crying because we got way more attention than they did when we just had our dopey like bridge table and our banana stand. So, do you think this was a success?
Yeah.
I would agree. 1/3 of all tweets from the conference hashtag were about our booth. Conference attendees suggested that we win a prize for best booth, even though there was no actual prize that existed. We were included in most of the coverage and wrap-up posts, and the most important part, we gave out 2,000 bananas with our unique URL, and 65% of the people who got bananas checked out our landing page. Usually you dream of 7%, 8%, 10%. We got 6%. There will be no questions in this. Just kidding. What can I?
was wondering how many people out over the 65% signed up for FreshBooks?
I cannot answer that question. I should know that, but in this particular instance, my job is to drive people to the website. It's the developers and the designers that their job is to convert. My job is to fill the funnel and things like that. So I can say with absolute fact, 65% of people got to the website. I don't know how many people converted. I should know, but I don't. But as I was saying, you dream of like 7%, 10% people who actually respond to a unique URL. We had 65%. So this is one example. Here's 100 more. I hope you people are comfortable. It's going to be a long day. Quick ways to start conversations. I know you're looking at me and thinking, well, it's easy for you, Saul. You're brilliant, and you're handsome, and you're charming, and all that stuff. But it's actually not that hard to do this stuff, okay? You follow the formula, and the most important thing, and this is, I sort of touched on it before, but I'm going to say it again. You have to know your customers extremely well, and you have to know what you can get away with. Because if you don't know what you can get away with, that's where you get into trouble. I always tell people, if you know your customers well enough, you know where that line of good taste is, you take one step over the line, because that one step is where all of the sort of like the stuff is memorable. It's where all the interesting things happen, that one step over the line. But if you have no idea where that line is, you're going to get in so much trouble, and people are going to hate your brand, and you're going to do something stupid or make some comment that just offends a ton of people. If you know where that line is, the best place to live is that one step over, and what you're going to do is you're actually going to bring people to that line, and then you take another step and another step and another step. Because if you're just in that like safe zone, no one's ever going to remember your brand. No one's going to care. You're going to do things, and you'll get 72 hours worth of something. But you're not going to be creating real brand like loyalty and effect. So force people to ask questions. I've already sort of mentioned that. Make them scratch their heads. Try 100 things. If you guys notice, all these examples I'm going to give you, they're all pretty inexpensive. I would rather do 50 things that cost $1,000 each than do one giant, thing that cost $100,000 and stuff like that. Because like you give me $100,000, all my ideas are going to be like, let's build a giant robot and stuff like that. But if you don't have a big budget to do things, that's when you have to get super clever, and it's the super clever stuff that actually converts really well. I already told you about the cat poster. 30 minutes of my time, 3 cents to print. That was it. If you notice a picture of me up there with a mime, I am very, very comfortable speaking in front of groups of people. I am very comfortable being on a stage in front of 2,000 people. Networking is a part of my job, but I just don't really like networking alone. You put me in a room alone, I'm going to check my phone 100 times and talk to half of the room and things. So if I don't have anyone to network, I hire mimes, I hire clowns, I hire people to network with me, and it works twofold. It's an instant conversation starter, people remember it, I get comfortable, and also if I'm with a mime, I am no longer the creepiest person in the room. If you see my stock photography of this like fun-loving couple at a picnic, when I talk about it's okay if no one shows up, the last bullet point on this slide, when I worked at FreshBooks, again, speaks to my whole, I don't like to be alone. I'd much rather be around people who are constantly telling me I'm wonderful. Every time I traveled, I would invite every one of our customers out to have dinner with me. as the company grew, when I started the company, it was 240,000 users. Through some clever stuff on my part, we grew to 5 million users. And when I was landing in certain cities, I was inviting 27,000 people to have dinner with me. I didn't have the budget to do that, and I knew that they wouldn't all show up. Because when you invite strangers to have dinner with you, most of the time they get uncomfortable. Most of the time they're going to scratch their head and say, why does this company want to have dinner with me? And I would cap it and say, first 50 people or whatever. But there were times where I didn't have budget to take them out. So I did a potluck dinner. People love this stuff. They want to get out involved. They want to meet the companies or the brands that they work with. They want to have, a voice on the product, and it's a really powerful thing. The story here, the reason I included in this slide was I invited like 100 people to have a potluck lunch with me in New York City at Bryant Park. If you've never been to Bryant Park, it's like Central Park but smaller. And the day that we did it, it happened to rain. 40 people still showed up in the rain because they had such brand affinity and they wanted to do this. No one had ever invited them to something. So because it was raining, we all walked over to Grand Central Station. We put a red and white checkerboard blanket on the ground, and we sat and we had lunch on the floor in Grand Central Station. We were kicked out in about 30 minutes, but for those 30 minutes, these people were celebrities. Everyone stopped to talk to them. Everybody wanted to know what was going on. And for those 30 minutes, every one of these customers were telling my story. They were telling the brand story about this company that invited us and we're down on the floor and blah, blah, blah. They were selling this company way better than I could ever sell these companies. You have to get out and know your first 100 customers. You should know them intimately. You should know everything about them. This is like a super quick story. If you see an iPhone with my face on it, like some people, and I don't do this anymore because I'm actually embarrassed by it, but like an idiot, I ran out and bought the very, very first iPhone, went to Buffalo, had it jailbroken. When you could actually get iPhones in Canada, I just got one here, and I had this phone that I didn't really need anymore. So I had a contest, and I sent out this newsletter, and the contest was Win Saul's iPhone. And this was the most applied or entered contest that we ever did when I was at FreshBooks. And people didn't actually care about the phone because, like, what do you want an old phone for? But because we wrapped the phone in a story, people got really excited about it. I'm going to tell you the story in a second, but the lesson is you don't have to give away TVs and like trips around the world. We did hundreds of contests, try 100 things. The things that connected with people the most were the kitschy stuff, the stuff that was fun, the stuff that people think. So the story around Win Saul's iPhone was, I'm going to send you my iPhone, but I'm going to send it to you in a Ziploc bag with 2 very, very visible thumbprints on the glass. And you're not supposed to activate it, you're not supposed to use it as a phone, you're supposed to carry the phone with you at all times. So should you ever accidentally murder somebody, you put the phone next to the dead body, and I will buy you 48 hours to get out of the country. People love this stuff. People respond to this stuff. If you know your customers, you know you can get away with, you can have fun like this. And like we were doing online accounting. People don't think of accounting services as something that's very fun-loving, but like nobody thinks of themselves as boring. Nobody thinks of themselves as, not fun. So even if all you're dealing with is accountants or all you're dealing with are actuarial, whatever those people are, give them something to be fun with or have fun, and you'll be amazed at what happens. If you see this conference badge, it says sponsor, the blue thing. I have hundreds of those sponsor badges that I bought at a craft store. I go to conferences all the time and just walk around like I own the place. It's actually a really inexpensive way to get into like the VIP areas and talk to people. You guys should try it. And if you see the little cartoon drawing, just like a year ago, as like sort of something fun to do. I don't really believe in like paying for sponsorships if you don't have to. So instead of hiring a magician or a clown to go networking, I hired a caricature artist. This guy was awesome. He just drew all the characters on a Samsung whatever. And so they kicked us out of the conference because they thought we were getting more attention than the people who actually paid for sponsorship. Because as I was networking and talking to people, he would just do a quick little sketch of them. When we traded business cards, he would email it to them, and everyone started talking about it. They thought it was the coolest thing ever. So they actually physically removed us from the conference because we were cooler than anybody that had paid for sponsorship. So I'm like, can't do that to me. Do you know who I am? So we just sat in the lobby, and anybody who used the hashtag, we just sketched them from their Twitter avatar. And then we just kept emailing and tweeting people the pictures of them. So for the next 3 hours, we still got more attention than anybody inside the building. There's so many little fun things you guys can do. And if you notice, all of these ideas have almost nothing to do with the product that I was selling. Okay? I never talk about my products because that conversation from A to Z, features and benefits, is a 10-minute conversation, 20 at most. Then the person will leave and they have nothing to share with someone else. You create experiences for people. They will go search out your product themselves. They will make their own opinions whether they need it or not. And if they don't need it, you still have given them something to tell their friends, like, oh my God, I didn't know that this company would buy me dinner, or I didn't know this or that, or whatever. So if you guys see, and these are more FreshBooks examples, but if you see our mascot up there, that was Ivan, and he was the FreshBooks mascot for like 10 years or 7 years, whatever. So this is something that never happened. So I'm not going to pretend it happened, but I tell this story kind of with the big, disclaimer that this is one of the few things that I wasn't allowed to do, but I love this idea so ridiculously much, I still share it, and then you guys can decide whether it's brilliant or not. But one day in a meeting, we just all decided that we were going to go to like a squirrel instead of Ivan. So now the mascot for FreshBooks is a squirrel. I don't really know what the connection is, but it seems to be working, so good for them. When we decided to kill Ivan, I said, well, let's kill him for real. Don't just like retire him. So I wanted to, I did this whole document of like how we kill Ivan. And for 6 months, I wanted him to get thinner and thinner and thinner in banners until one day he was sitting in a chair because he couldn't stand anymore. And then he'd have an IV, and then we would release a press release that Ivan is dead. And we, sort of like that. Never happened, but man, that would have been the greatest thing ever. If you guys see Evel Knievel here, Evel Knievel is like a personal hero of mine. Horrible person, racist, all that stuff. But man, could that guy jump motorcycles. I love Evel Knievel, and one of the things that I do, everyone sort of finds their inspiration in a bunch of different places. I for years just said, well, I got to find a stunt where I can find a brand to buy me an Evel Knievel jumpsuit. So I came up with an idea where we were going to, at a conference, recreate Evel Knievel jumping over school buses. So I already said most of my ideas are super inexpensive. This one was actually really expensive, but it was kind of amazing. Got a field, got ramp, got 2 school buses, wasn't going to go too crazy, got a motorcycle, got my jumpsuit. And if you guys have ever seen Evel Knievel jump on Wild World of Sports, he would do like 3-4 laps, go up onto the top of the ramp, break, take his helmet off, talk about Jesus, all sorts of crazy rambling stuff, go do it a couple more wheelies, and then do the jump. But it was like the whole jump was 45 seconds, but somehow Wild World of Sports did it for 45 minutes, and people were captivated. So we basically did the same thing, got everyone out of a conference to go cross street to this field, had all set up like every bit of this ramp was branded with hashtags and promo codes, and there was no way anyone wouldn't know exactly why they were there. I had my jumpsuit and driving my motorcycle around and get on top of the ramp and do my little talk. So I get to the top of the ramp, I take my helmet off, and I'm just elevator pitching these people. So I'm like, thank you for coming. This is brought to you by this, and you should do this and buy this and sign up for a free account and all this stuff. And then I would do like a couple more laps. And the reason I kept doing laps was we only put like a thimble full of gas in the motorcycle, because the plan was I wasn't going to jump over no school buses. I was just waiting for the motorcycle to run out of gas, and then like just sort of be all like self-effacing, go, oh, I'm such an idiot. Sorry guys, but free month of our service for everybody. It was great. I got a jumpsuit out of it. We got 1,000 customers because people loved this story. Tons of pictures, tons of stuff. You don't have to actually fulfill the promise that you're making. You can let people down as long as you let people down in the most adorable fashion ever. Okay? And wearing a leather jumpsuit with a big number 1 and stuff like that on. More stories. I have done so many ridiculously cool things. You guys should be in awe that I even showed up today. If you see CC Chapman, internet celebrity and raconteur, he's holding a thing of cereal with a business card and an iTunes gift card. I did a contest, again, nothing to do with our product. Contest, best song ever written, Twitter contest. We had hundreds and hundreds of people who just kept tweeting us song like titles and stuff like that. First prize was $1 million and a trip around the world. Second prize was a box of cereal. We didn't really have any like on-staff legal representation, so you can make claims like this, and nobody really like noticed. But anyways, nobody won first prize, but there was a ton and ton of second prize people. So we mailed out hundreds of boxes of cereal. And like cereal and like taking that one step too far and sort of crossing the line, I bought all this cereal and I opened every box. And because cereal, you're supposed to look for the prize inside, I put my business card and a gift card in every box of cereal, glued it back up, and mailed it out to people. So there was tons of people that found the stuff inside, tons of people tweeted about it, they thought it was great. There's probably people who still don't know that there's a gift card inside of these things. But like you do these things because that's what you do. If you see, there's 2 bottles of Kozlik's mustard. There's a guy named Andy Cernovitz who wrote a book called Word of Mouth Marketing. It's actually a really brilliant book, mostly because there's a chapter on me in it. But besides that, it's still a pretty good book. Before I knew Andy, I read online that he liked this mustard. It's only available at St. Lawrence Market. So I decided to go out and buy him a couple of bottles as a way to introduce myself, get on his radar, and tell him that I'm the best and he should pay attention. If you notice, there's Sharpie all over the glass bottles. I could have just sent them with a note and said, hey, like your book or whatever. But instead, I wrote taunting messages all over the mustard bottles because I wanted him to know exactly who sent the mustard every time he made a sandwich. And every time he opened his fridge, he would know that he's no longer going to be the best word-of-mouth marketer, or at least thought of things. So, it's what can you get away with? What are you willing to take a chance on? That's what guerrilla marketing is. Guerrilla marketing is being out in the world. It's crossing the line. It's getting attention. But it's not just getting attention. It's getting attention with a purpose and a goal, because getting attention is easy. I'll skip that stuff. If you guys see the picture of me in Times Square, that's me on a digital wall in Times Square, as big as Marky Mark himself. I got myself on a digital wall for $3. Okay, there's opportunities everywhere to get your message out. You just have to pay attention and know what's going on. Like I said earlier, I spent tons and tons of time in New York City. I like Times Square. I know you're not supposed to. I know it's like whatever, but I would just sit with my laptop and answer email in Times Square all the time. And I saw on American Eagle Outfitters, they would just have unhappy tourist after unhappy tourist up on their wall. And I thought, like, that's kind of weird. It's like a really weird brand impression, seeing like angry German people holding shopping bags and stuff like that. So I went in and asked them, what's the deal? And they said, if you buy anything in the store, they take a picture of you and they put you up on the wall. So I'm like, well, I want to be up on the wall. I waited 8 months until I had something branded that I could wear, because there's no point in going up on the wall for ego. You go up for like a purpose and stuff like that. So I had my branded jacket, Thora.com, it was a company I was working with at the time. And I went up and I took a picture. So it was a rainy day. 50 people may have saw it, like in Times Square. but I took the picture and I posted it online. And to this day, it's the most viewed thing I've ever put on the internet with like 40,000 views, because it's interesting. And it's like, people wonder, how did I get up on a digital wall? I bought a keychain, okay? Like, that's how I got up on the wall. So even if things don't see things in real time, you can repurpose this stuff if it's interesting. If no one shows up, you still have content. You still have something cool to share with people. And if you know what people are going to connect to, people will get really excited. And this thing's been passed around. I've talked about it in hundreds and hundreds of talks, and everyone thinks it's super cool. $3, that's all it took. Me holding a birthday cake. Again, just like the iPhone contest, had a contest through newsletters, whereas win Saul's birthday present. Basically just told a story that my parents give really crappy birthday presents. So this year I'm not even gonna open them. Whoever wins, I'll just mail the still wrapped present to people. Tons of people entered the contest. We mailed out hundreds of like dopey things that we bought in like dollar stores and all sorts of things. People got little Canada bobbleheads of beavers, and we bought tons and tons of zipper ties and Playboy cologne and stuff like that. We just sent whatever embarrassing thing we could send, because I don't care if people, like think it's like whatever. But again, if you guys see a theme, never talk about the product, never talk about anything. This is the most recent thing I'm doing, and I'm actually kind of excited about this. I'd love your opinion if you guys think this is cool. But one of the companies I'm very good friends with, friends of mine, helping them out with some ideas, it's a company called Nuvango. They're launching in a couple of days. It's an art marketplace. So it's a place you go buy art, okay? How do you get the word out for something like that? What I suggested was we buy the back cover for the next 3 issues of a influential art magazine. And what we're doing is the very first back cover is going to be completely blank, except for like a little bit of copy at the bottom, which I just didn't have time to get a thing. And it's basically going to say, have you ever wanted to be on the cover of this magazine? Draw it right on, tweet us, send us, email, whatever, and we're going to pick like people, anyone who participates in this, they're going to have their actual art on the next 2 covers. So you can actually win the back cover of an art magazine just by participating in our thing, taking pens and markers and drawing up physically on the actual magazine. We're also going to seed it by going to Comic-Con and a couple different places where tons of artists and hand out hundreds and hundreds of these magazines. But this when I talk about goals and I talk about things like that, one of the reasons about this, it's aspirational. People will dig it. Hopefully they'll participate. It's going to clog the internet, hopefully with our hashtags and stuff like that. But beyond that, we're looking for artists. So if anyone actually takes the time to draw on the back of these magazines and stuff, everyone who's good enough is going to get an invitation to this site and get to feature their stuff and things like that. So this is a really cool idea. I'm really proud of. I hope you guys think it's cool too. Something we did for North by Northeast, if you guys went into any of the bathrooms at North by Northeast, there was actually art in the bathroom with a sticker that said, great artist, or good artist copy, great artist steal. If you like this piece of art, just take it home and tweet us. We'll put something else on the wall. People did it. People thought it was cool. Started lots of conversations. These are small little things that don't require a lot of energy, don't require a lot of things, but they have huge, huge impact. Man, I'm running out of steam. A couple more ideas. How am I doing, by the way? Yeah? Okay, you guys have gotten past all the labia talk at the beginning and stuff like that? Okay. So hey, here's some more things. And again, I'm just piling on these examples to you guys because I really want you to see nothing is impossible. If none of these ideas fit with what you're doing, mash 2 or 3 of them together and come up with something that works, or any of that stuff. So Chris Brogan on my Internet All-Star baseball card here. A few years ago at South by Southwest, it's this big interactive and music festival in Texas. We decided to make basically baseball cards for our customers at FreshBooks. The thing that we liked really about them was this is the only place that had any branding for us. If you flip the card over, it had all of Chris's contact information, his stats, if you will, why you would hire him, stuff of things that he was good at. And we printed these up. We made a set of 20 cards. Everyone who got a badge for the conference in their like goodie bag, they got 4 packs of these. Each pack had 3 cards and a checklist. And everybody on my team, we just walked around the whole conference with backpacks full of like these packs of cards. Anyone who was featured on the cards actually got thousands of their own cards, so they could use them as business cards during things. Because like the time I told you about Grand Central Station, people would say, wow, that's a really cool business card. Where'd you get it? And these people would sell our product better than we could sell our product. If you guys know the basis of referrals, the basis of trust, it's know, like, and trust. If I tell you right now, you should go see this movie, it's really great, you're gonna be like, well, you know, I kind of know Saul, but I don't really know his taste. I don't know, like maybe this isn't gonna be my taste. But if your best friend tells you to do something, you automatically take it as a credible resource. So we empowered people to be our sort of salespeople and pitch our product for us. Chris Brogan is obviously like a real internet all-star, but the thing I'm most proud about this, you know, sort of stunt was we did Chris Brogan, Gary Vaynerchuk, and Tina Roth Eisenberg, who's SwissMiss.com. They were the only quote-unquote famous people in the deck of cards. Everyone else was just people we had relationships with, we really liked, customers who we thought were amazing, and we made them celebrities. Because one of the things you guys, when you're doing stuff like this, and you're doing sort of like ambassador or whatever you want to call the things, fancy people are awesome, they'll get you a lot of attention, but they'll stop talking about you 24 hours later. If you can actually find regular people and make them celebrities, they'll talk about you forever, and they're awesome, and they love your product. So it's really great to actually empower regular people. The next slide, this is super important when you guys talk about guerrilla marketing and you talk about budgets and things like that. Barter and dead inventory. If you guys have barter, anything you can barter with, or you have dead inventory if you do physical products and stuff like that. As I mentioned, I was the person who launched Zipcar in Canada. After our first year, we decided let's throw a Christmas party because that's what you do. I had like $300 to like spend on a Christmas party. I could have taken my 2 staff, gone for steak dinners, and sort of called it a night. Instead, I got the Phoenix Concert Theater, I got 2 live bands and all the booze we could drink, and I invited every one of our customers, it was about 500 or 600 at the time, to come hang out with us and get to know them, and it cost me less than $300 because I had 100 cars sitting in parking spots and nobody was driving. People were signing up for the service, they just weren't using the cars. So as far as I'm concerned, those are dead inventory. I would much rather have them circling the city, people seeing them active, than actually just seeing them all the time in the parking spots. So I gave 1,000 hours of free driving for the venue, 500 hours for this, 200 hours for that. It meant nothing to me, I wasn't losing money. It was dead inventory. Anytime something wasn't being used, I gotta tell you, this is the longest it's taken someone to leave one of my talks usually. So. But if you have dead inventory, it's something very powerful that you can use as a barter tool. Don't just assume you have to spend money on a lot of this stuff. Remember that do interesting slide? There really wasn't one. I like to pretend that I just throw these things together at the last minute. But let me see. I've actually never spoken about this concept in a talk before, so I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible because we're almost getting close to Q&A time. But I used to work at Rogers. I was part of their startup program. Any small companies that were incubated inside of Rogers, I was sort of hired to be the evangelist and promote them. There was a real estate app called Zoocasa, which is still around. It's a great app if you guys are looking for homes. It's actually quite good. And one of the ways we used to promote it, again, it's not really dead inventory or barter, but it sort of falls in the same category. Even though we worked for Rogers, Rogers owned this company. Rogers did not give us money to spend. We did not have access to their communication powerhouse and stuff like that. We were kind of on our own. So, but one thing we could do was we had the Rogers Center to use as a stunt. So we're a real estate app. We were trying to get the word out. So I actually got Melinda Rogers to agree to list the Rogers Center on our website. It was an exclusive listing. We had it for $1 billion. As far as they were concerned, if somebody would give them $1 billion for the building, they would actually sell it. We got a ton of attention for it. It was in the newspapers. People treated it as if the building was really for sale. We created purposely the worst real estate walkthrough videos, like done with iPhones. It was my nasally voice. It was like horrible and stuff like that. But it got lots of attention. Okay, this was something that we just had access to. We were really only physically in the building for one afternoon. Okay, there's tons of things out there. If you can just dream them up, dream them up. I talked about Thora. Thora was another Rogers company. This is another thing I've never spoken about. So you guys are like, wow, this is like a big deal today. You guys are really getting the thing. But something we did. So again, how do you market things to get the word out, but also be like explain why people should care and be very relevant? Thora was a news aggregation service that would basically crawl. We were, besides Google, Yahoo, and like maybe 2 or 3 people, we were the only company in the world, besides like these big players, that indexed the entire internet like 4 times a day. And we were actually going through, they had this algorithm that would rank the top news stories, and it could actually predict sort of what would break next. Again, at South by Southwest. How do we get the word out for Thora? Well, we're a news service, so we created a newspaper every day of the event. So at midnight, I would start working on the next day's newspaper, pulling the stories, getting up. I'd get it to the printer by 5 in the morning. They'd have it printed by like 6 in the afternoon. I hired a bunch of college kids, and just like at a hotel when they would leave the newspaper at your door, we just stuffed them under the doors of 8 different hotels every day. Every day we had fresh comic books every day. We had like an ad for a talk I was given. We had the top 10 stories, and we'd have one story that was completely relevant and timely to that day. And we did this every day for 6 days. We created a 4-page newspaper based on this. People like saw this like crazy. They didn't like understand it or whatever. And we got like, threatened to be kicked out of hotels. And here's another thing. If you guys are trying to do guerrilla stuff, try to figure out every bad thing that can happen to you and actually like figure out how to do this. So one of the things we did, I knew we were going to be in the hotels at like 4 in the morning, shoving things under doors. So through the power of Photoshop, we had laminates made with all the logos from South by Southwest, and we basically just said we were allowed to be there. So anytime security hassled us, we'd show our laminate, and it just said like South by Southwest Interactive, the year, and we said like, I think we were like the premiums team or something like that, and we would just shove stuff on the door. Again, this is an incredible amount of work, and a lot of the guerrilla stuff is really tough to do, but it pays off enormously if you're willing to like be dedicated and try to do this stuff. We've got like a little bit of time. Do you guys want to hear a story of a woman that spent the night with me in Texas at South by Southwest, or should we just keep going? Well, you can come grab me after. I'll tell the story. This is like one of the last examples. We're actually almost done, and like we've got like 2 minutes or something. I'll burn through it. But a company called urbandig.com. This is a company that I was actually really excited to work with. I really loved the product. They're not around anymore, unfortunately. And that's actually like a lesson as well. As soon as people stop paying me, bad things happen to their company. Just leave it at that. But Urban Dig, it was basically off the beaten path tours. So you go to a city, photos will tell you where all the art galleries and the predictable stuff is. These people told you the stuff that like you'd really want to spend 2 hours if you only had 2 hours. So it was filled with like vinyl record shops and vintage clothing stores and cool bars and like best places to get pizza. It was actually really awesome. So this company had literally zero money to market their product. Every bit of money went into developing the app. So again, kind of like all those other examples, what's the most obvious thing you do when you have zero money? You leverage other people's platforms with ridiculous stuff. So you guys know how like every decade or so, the Virgin Mary shows up on like a pierogi or in a window. We did our logo inside a grilled cheese, and we posted it on eBay. We called it Grilled Cheese with Spiritual Image. You can't see the copy, but it was really brilliant. I wrote it. And I listed it as $12,500. And the reason I listed it so expensive is I didn't want anyone to buy it because it was just a Photoshopped grilled cheese. It didn't actually exist. But because I seeded it with a bunch of people who helped spread it, and because it was interesting, and apparently anytime you write grilled cheese spiritual image on eBay, like things just go crazy. In the first hour, we had about 1,000 people view the auction. Nobody had bought anything, which is fine. But because so many people in the first hour viewed it, it went over to the home page as like a hot auction. And from there, over the course of the 7 days, it was about 27,000 people viewed this auction. Out of the 27,000 people, 10,000 people went to our website for more information, and 4,000 people downloaded the app, just based on a Photoshop grilled cheese. I mentioned that I used to travel like every week, so spent a lot of time in hotel rooms, spent a lot of time in airports. I wrote probably close to 200 missed connections on Craigslist. They all followed the same formula: boy meets girl, girl meets boy, boy meets boy, whatever. Just about to say I love you, just about to give you my phone number, just about to ask you out, but some street marketing guy in a urbandig.com t-shirt interrupted us, or a truck drove by. The urbandig.com truck drove by and honked his horn, and then I lost my train of thought. They were all the same. The thing that was interesting about them was they all took place at places on the urbandig.com app. No idea, how many people actually read them, responded to them, any of that stuff. I do know just from basic analytics that 4,000 people were directed from Craigslist to our website, and sort of go there. I picked a fight with PETA because, of course, we had a rabbit as a logo, and if you want attention, you pick a fight with PETA. You see the Twitter account PETA for Rabbits. The whole office just threw up a little retweet. We hired a homeless guy to walk around the city as a rabbit, and PETA sort of got upset. Thing was that that's not a real PETA account. That was me talking to myself all day long. But the reason we did this was we launched our app at you see LP Grow. It was Launch Party Grow Conference in Vancouver a couple years ago. And the reason I launched this whole nobody was following PETA for Rabbits, but anyone, and this is a secret about the tech community, everyone loves to tell you where they're going. Anyone who on Twitter was hashtagging, I'm getting on a plane to go to Grow, or I'm going to be at the Grow conference, I emailed them I tweeted them from the PETA account and said, will you stand with us against this horrible company? Will you help us put them down? They've got a rabbit and what they're doing is awful. So I made the elite tech people in the Valley uncomfortable about our product. And then taking the idea just a little bit too far, I also got people to picket outside of the conference, saying things like, who speaks for the rabbits, stop Urban Dig. So every person, media or otherwise, who came to that conference, and just so you understood the format of the conference, there's 30 companies who were all launching the same day. So you just basically get a bridge table and you're in the room. So what happened was, because everybody was stopped at the door and we had a fake TV reporter and the whole deal and stuff, these are all friends and stuff. Everybody that came in got sort of harassed by us. So as soon as they entered the room, the only thing they could do was come right to our booth and say, do you guys know what's going on outside? And then they were so interested in us, we got to talk to them exclusively, and everybody downloaded the app, and things kind of went. And so whenever I tell the story, people are like, well, weren't you afraid that this was going to be negative? I'm like, absolutely not. They either could have never known about us and not cared, and we got no downloads, or we do something really interesting and we get a ton of downloads. You don't need to know this. Boring. And this is also something we do. So this actually did cost money, but again, I did it almost all on barter. I threw myself a birthday party, and it was the same day that we were launching Urban Dig New York. So basically, threw barter and stuff like that, I was able to get an art gallery in New York City, artists, because they were friends of mine. The only thing we paid for, I think, was a DJ, and I invited like 100, 200 friends, and we had people just come and paint to the DJ all night long, and it was super cool. I should have just stopped right there because I'll never have a better birthday. But again, all these ideas were born using like laugh, think, cry formula. So I know I've given you guys like a ton of stuff, and some was spoon-fed and some was forced down your throat and stuff like that. But like this really does work, and all it really takes is, you know, trying to take some chances and stuff. And, you know, like Seth Godin agrees with me. He says, you know, instead of outthinking your competition, it's worth trying to outlove them. Everyone's working hard on the thinking part, but few of your competitors worry about the art and generosity and caring part. It's not like a perfectly fitting quote, because I actually like to outthink people too. But there is something to creating amazing experiences for people. Don't shove sales down their throat, because, you know, I use FreshBooks as an example all the time. You had to be a small business who was small enough to not need an accountant. So that's like 5% of like North America and stuff like that. So I was marketing a product that only 5% of the country could use. But my philosophy was, we create experiences for them, 100% of the people that we reached could share those experiences and help me find those 5%, because I could never find those 5% on my own. So I needed help. So you bury people with cool experiences and stuff to talk to, and you give them reasons to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. They're going to keep talking about you, and they're going to share those things. And then all those people that you could never get to because they're in little nooks and crannies, they're going to self-identify, and they're going to become customers. So in closing, I can see some of you are super thrilled and relieved that this is coming. If you remember nothing else from my talk, remember these few things. Make people laugh, make people think, make people cry. If you have an idea that hits all three, I can almost guarantee you that that idea is going to be great. If you can hit 2 out of the 3, you're going to be pretty good. If you only hit 1, it's probably not going to be the best idea. But this is a super simple formula of how to just sort of like, you know, figure out whether or not these ideas are worthwhile. This is kind of like my personal mantra. The best reason in the world not to do things the way most people do them is most people are not successful. You should not believe anything I just told you. Almost everybody lies. I don't, because I don't have to. But at the same time, you know, there are no things as best practices. I know this speaking series is titled Best Practices, but don't go by best practices, because there is no such thing. You could do all of the ideas that I've shown you today, and they may have more success or less success. Don't copy things. You know, be inspired by things. Do your own great things. If you know your customers, you'll know what you can get away with, and they'll be way better than any of the ideas I've done today. Know where the line of good taste is. I know I mentioned it a couple times, but shock people, don't stun them. Okay? If you know where that line is and you always live one step behind that line, Coca-Cola does this thing called the 70-20-10. Has anyone heard of the 70-20-10? All of your like communications, keep 70% of that stuff super safe, that you never offend anybody. 20% of it should be just a tiny bit edgy, just to get people's attention, and 10% should be experimental. And what they try to do is they try to move more of that 20 into the 70 and more of that 10 into the 20, and keep finding where the limit is, okay? Always experiment, always know where the limit of what you can get away with, because it's that one step over the line where everything interesting happens. Trying too many things from this talk wouldn't be a good idea. They've all been done before, okay? Because I mostly spoke about like all sorts of things and stuff like that, and I would cut you. That's funny. I blew the joke, but you guys get it. I've mentioned this a couple times. I hope I've inspired you to take the smallest little chance to do something different, because it really works. Wherever your comfort level is, stick to your comfort level. You don't have to go and do all the things I've done. You don't have to go get an Evel Knievel jumpsuit. You don't have to do any of that stuff. But take a small chance and see what happens. It's so important. The worst thing in the world is being a completely forgettable brand, or that nobody cares about. Because like being safe isn't always like the safest thing and stuff like that. You're almost better offending some people and apologizing than having nobody care about you whatsoever. And also remember, I'm very romantic.
So we do have some time for Q&A. I have one mic and there's another in the aisle. So if you do have questions, feel free to use either.
Just, no one ever asks questions in my talks.
I just want to ask a question. I like using popular culture, but isn't most of that stuff copyrighted?
Yeah, it's like you can't exactly do like a national campaign with TV ads like using characters, but like if you send out a newsletter or you do like something like that, like it's all like within things. But and even like most stuff, if you get really clever, you can go after like stuff that's domain free and stuff like that. Technically, Mickey Mouse is way beyond like domain rights and stuff like that, like Steamboat Willie and things like that.
How do you go about brainstorming? Because it sounds like you generate like a ridiculous volume of ideas. How do you go about generating those ideas and then narrowing them down to the ones that you feel will resonate the most?
So my way of doing it is I just consume tons and tons of like TV and movies and books and all this stuff. Almost every idea that I have, you can point to the last 2 or 3 things I've read or stuff like that. I keep tons of ideas in notebooks. I go buy 4 or 5 magazines a month, and anything that's interesting I just rip out and put in a folder somewhere. Because like I'll come up with tons of ideas that aren't relevant right now to anything I'm working on, but I know it's interesting and I know I want to do them. So you just like keep stockpiling stuff, and how you know what's right, like you just gotta kind of like know your audience and know like what you can get away with and stuff like that. Kind of like knowing what you can get away with is the secret to all this stuff. You don't want anything that's gonna blow up in your face or anything like that. But like, the other thing that nobody ever really tells you is like, like when you're talking about word of mouth marketing or guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, if you do something and it doesn't catch on, it also means nobody knew about it. So like you can't really get in trouble unless you're doing something crazy offensive that, people get, crazy about and stuff like that. But like, like never throw away an idea, never like thing. The Evel Knievel thing, the only reason I wanted to do it is I just finished reading his biography and I'm like, man, we gotta do something like this. Like, like I've done stuff based on, Blues Brothers, Cannonball Run, like all these wacky movies that I watch every day and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, and sometimes it's a snippet of something. You don't take the whole idea and stuff like that. Like there are no original ideas anymore. Everything's been done. Take someone's idea, take it from a movie, take it from a TV show, and make it something awesome. Make it something that people are gonna like really kind of dig and buy into and stuff like that. So, like don't be afraid by being influenced, or I don't like to use the word influence, but don't be afraid by being inspired by other people's stuff and things like that. Don't steal something completely, like as is and stuff like that. That's uncool. But like the banana stand, like something like that. It's almost an exact rip off of the thing, but we're using it for a completely different purpose, and we use it for like the right reasons and stuff like that.
Thank you.
So you talk about, in a sense, having the nerve just to take that step over the line, and whether with the companies you're working with, but you're talking about these ideas, but how many of those, like you talked about that one, how many of them actually get shot down by, like, say, you're working with FreshBooks before?
Yeah, I had tons of ideas.
Tons of them were shot down by the company themselves, saying, no, that's just too much, we can't go there. Yeah. So it's like, how do you determine which one, what? They shot down 4 of these, I really believe in this one idea, screw them, I'm just going to go and do it anyway. So as a consultant, you can't do that, but if you work for the company, I do stuff all the time where I've famously been quoted for the fact that I say like once a year I have an idea that's worth getting fired over, and when you have that idea you have to do it. And there are times where I've been fired over, and there's been times where I haven't been fired over it. And so I've been fired plenty of times. I just, I'm super good at what I do. There's always 2 more people that want to hire me. Getting fired is sometimes the best thing in the world.
You know, you get a couple weeks to sit at home and watch more TV, and then you just go back to work and stuff like that. But it's like, you know.
But from getting fired, did they see any kind of, like, was it like, they say, you know, they fired you because they weren't happy that you went with it, but do they still get like positive reaction to their brand? Like,
Nothing has ever done is blown up in my face. I have absolutely blind faith in my own ability. It'll happen one day, but like nothing's ever blown up in my face because I'm pretty calculated. Like I give off this air of, you know, whatever, but I'm like very strategic. I know what I'm getting myself into.
How important is measurability, or because you work with such small budgets, that's less important? And I guess the other question that's tied to that is around scalability and repeatability. Is this practice a purely creative exercise, or?
No, you absolutely have to measure stuff, otherwise you don't know if you're being successful. But that's why I spoke about goals front. Like sometimes the goal is just let's create a spectacle that gets us media. Okay, so then the measurability was how many pieces of media we get. Let's create a spectacle that gets us customers. Well, how many customers do we get? Like you have to know what the goal is first. So something I truly believe in. I'm not a very analytics-driven person, so whenever I, you know, join somewhere, the very first hire I make is someone who's better at numbers than I am, because that's how you prove yourself and things like that. But you know, I truly believe not everything great can be measured, and not everything measurable is that great. For the most part, I think people measure the wrong things, and you can really, you know, wrangle numbers to make whatever you want them to be. I think it's much better to just be goal driven, and did you meet your goal? You know, what were the things like that? But as far as like, you know, what good is having a zillion hits to your website if nobody converts and stuff like that? It's all like, you know, there's all different ways of looking at it, but absolutely you have to measure everything. Otherwise, like that's how I'm able to keep doing what I'm doing, because after a while I can go to somebody and say, we've done 10 things, they've all, you know, been this. Now just leave me alone. I can do 10 more, and I promise the same results, kind of thing. No, you guys are great. Thank you very much.